Welcome to the Stack Supplement Podcast, the premier source for supplement news and reviews.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Stack Supplement Podcast, and this is another interview with one of what I like to call the smartest, most informative, educational people in the industry. I've never spoken to this guy, but I've heard him, seen him, and that's more than enough for me to say he's one of the smartest people I've seen out there. And it is none other than the Guerrilla Chemist from the brand Chemix. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you for those kind words. Yeah, we haven't spoken. We go back and forth on IG, and
yeah,
you guys do a lot of nice articles about it. And I was just telling my wife, I was like, when they write articles, they always say something very cool about in unique Guerrilla Chemist fashion or something like that when it comes to my formulas or ingredients. So I think that's really cool. You guys pay attention to all the different stuff that I try and do.
Well, it's very true, because I see God knows how many supplements come through each day, each week. It's insane. And I say this a lot. I saw my description is a pre-workout that I saw yesterday, or a supplement I saw yesterday, and I got brands coming in daily that are just like, hey, this is our brand new groundbreaking pre, this is our fully loaded pre. And like way back I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be amazing. I look and I'm like, what the fuck, I saw this, like this. And it's the same these days. You get 6 grams of citrulline, maybe malate, maybe not, 3 grams of beta alanine, 2.5 betaine, 350 caffeine. Yep. It's just it's the same shit. But then like when a Chemix product rolls in, you don't really get like hype or anything, or like a huge, like it's gonna blow your mind. You get, it's like, here's the formula, and you're like, the flaming shit is this. Like you just look at it and you're like, okay. And there's a few things you recognize. Even on the pre-workout, there's a few things you recognize. You're like, okay. I mean, a lot of this, like specifically Metabolic, like when you just drop, like even the sleep supplement as well.
Yeah.
Like you didn't go for the traditional mix. And I think Metabolic was like a hugely exaggerated version of what you usually do. Like you didn't, and I know that a lot of people don't like them, but you know, muscle builders, test boosters usually got what, tribulus, fenugreek, usual. But I remember seeing the label on this and I was like, okay, like I knew maybe half of it, maybe, but the rest, I was just looked at it and I was like, but it is to that point, because it's coming from you, you know that it's not like, and even if it's not coming from you, no one ever usually puts something in a product that you don't know familiar with. I don't think not even a bad brand does that, because they just really can't, or they don't have the ability. So I have to ask, the first question is, what is the process like behind, like, how do you venture out and find these things that seemingly no one else touches until you decide, like, yeah, I'm going to give this a run?
Well, you know, my background, right, is in biochemistry. So I read a lot of papers, and a lot of times I look for, what's the mechanism of action of what I'm trying to do? Is there a pharmaceutical that does this? How does the pharmaceutical work? And then is there a natural version that has a similar mechanism as a pharmaceutical? So for like the sleep, for example, I looked at how prescription sleep medications work, how they bind to your GABA receptor. And then I looked to see what things that are naturally occurring that do the same thing. And I stumbled upon magnolia bark a couple years ago, and that's been around for a while. And I messed around with some doses, and I think it works really well, because those are natural compounds that bind to the same receptor as prescription meds. And then it kind of rabbit holes into what else does this. And then one of the ingredients, I actually found the paper from 2018 is when they actually figured out what was in the plant. The plant was around in Africa for a long time, and they used it for sleep, but they didn't know what the actives were, because it's a chemical process to like basically extract the thing that you're looking for, the molecule, specifically that one, and then figure out how many carbon atoms or whatever atoms it has and where the bonds are and all that stuff. It's very difficult to do analytically. So they just named them not too long ago. And I was lucky enough to find a source that had that material.
Yeah, that was a next question was when you do these things, like you read through and you're like, cool. Isn't it sort of, I don't know how you say it. Isn't it like extremely unlikely that someone's producing this on mass production enough so that you could put it in a like, are there some that you've found where you're like, this is amazing, oh, this is awesome, and then you go to the manufacturer ingredient and just be like, hey, you don't happen to have this, do you? Like, because I'm sure that happens. That has to happen
all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say
some of the stuff is not commercially available, or it's extremely expensive because it's not commercially available. So there have been ingredients I've really wanted to use, and I just couldn't get a source that worked with the price. Even if that was the sole ingredient, it was just too hard to get the amount of material you need to make enough products to sell it, and the amount that you need for it to be active. So yes, that does happen a lot. Luckily, my partners at Chemix are really good at sourcing stuff. And, we do a lot of testing on botanicals, specifically like TLC testing, which is thin layer chromatography, which not a lot of places do because it's a chemical and analysis where you could see that the species of the plant you have is what this powder says it is, I
was going to say, because I know when it comes to testing regular ingredients, it's very expensive when it comes to some of these rarer ingredients. So I can't even imagine how much it would cost for something that, you have trouble sourcing. Is there an ingredient that you've found, like, let's say there's 10 ingredients you find and 2 of them you're really excited about and the rest you're moderately excited about. Have you used the ones that you're extremely excited about and just like, these are amazing, or have the ones that have just always been really awesome in studies and research just not been able to be sourced?
No, one of the ingredients that I really was excited about is Kanna, which has actually been around for a while. I believe it was under the branded name Zembrin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so Zembrin trademarked this 25 milligram capsule of Kanna. And when I read about Kanna and what it actually does and where it's from, like in South Africa, they chew it as a mood enhancer because it naturally is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, kind of how antidepressants work. And so I got a sample of Kanna, and the Zembrin is like $4,000 a kilo. So it's a super expensive ingredient.
Shit.
And I got a sample of the raw powder, and it literally looks like dirt and it tastes terribly. But I started dosing at higher doses, what the people in South Africa do. So they chew it anywhere between 500 and 1500 milligrams. So I started playing around with 500 and 750 to see the different effects. And then at around 1,000, which is what I wound up using in the pre-workout, there seemed to be a very synergistic effect between the serotonin release and the mood enhancement combined with some of the stimulants that are dopamine releasers. So there was the mood elevation was just incredibly different than anything else, and the focus from all that stuff. It was when I did it for the first time, I really felt like it was very euphoric. It wasn't anything like I've had in a supplement before. So that's when I thought, okay, I got something cool here. Let's figure out how to use it with everything else.
I have seen that show up in a lot more products, I would say, since you started using it. I remember I saw it in one, and then someone mentions like, oh, it's not that great if it does compared to Chemix. And I was just like, wait, Chemix had this? And I look back and I'm like, oh yeah. And I've slowly seen it used more and more.
It's expensive. That's why it's cost prohibitive for a lot of brands that, make products that are not as expensive from a raw material standpoint as Chemix and stuff like that. So I can understand, but I do, to your point, I do see a lot of people's, I hate the word like trendsetter, because I don't view myself that way, but I do see a lot of people use stuff that I use that I bring to first market or bring at a certain dose, an effective dose.
Well, it's hard to say trendsetter. It's sort of like being the first guy to drive a McLaren, right? You're an exclusive club, because while you are using it, very few have the power and the ability to put that in their product, let alone make it one of the ingredients at a good dose. And you have the Chemix has the ability of pricing this stuff at $50-$60, and fans don't seem to mind, which I would say 5 years ago people would have shit their pants at. But with the amount of brands that have come on board, you really have had to set yourself apart. And it's just, you've got brands that go lower, you've got brands that stay in the middle, then you got a few more up there in your realm of that 50-60 price range, where it's just I think people are willing to pay 10 to 20 more for something that is that more premium, something different, something effective, as you say, things that aren't in other products. And yeah, I was curious if you hadn't found an ingredient that you were just blown away. And by the sounds of things, there are some that you just couldn't get, and it's just difficult. Was Amodin the Cortibolic, was that along the same lines? Because when I saw that by itself, and you put it out there, I'm like, I was excited because of all the benefits, all the promises, the effects, and I was like, this should be really cool. And then I saw the formula, I'm like, I gotta tell you, I ain't seen a product with one ingredient that sits at that price, like, ever.
Yeah.
And I was skeptical, and I think I bought it because I was skeptical. I think that's why I originally grabbed it. And then I tried it, and I was just like, son of a bitch. It was like, it was, I found that the high dose was a bit difficult on me, but I was like,
yeah.
I mean, you have to have been extremely impressed with the research and the benefits on that to make a product only with that, though.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I had been sitting on that ingredient since Blackstone days. Like, I had this idea. We never got it into a product when I was at Blackstone. It was hard to get a 95% material at the time. And then absorption and bioavailability, two different things, but two things that cause it to not be as effective. There's a process called glucuronidation, which happens to a lot of polyphenol type compounds where your body attaches a glucuronic acid to it to make it very water soluble, so you can pee it out. And it does this very rapidly. And so that's when I saw a study that they combined Amodin with the black pepper extract, piperine. And that's why there's such a high dose in there, because when I went by what the study used and saw the results of how it increased the bioavailability and how active it is, that I wanted to push it to see how, like, let's use a real high dose of black pepper. Let's get enough Amodin so where it's a noticeable effect. You can definitely see fat loss, because the data on Amodin is great. The main issue was getting it into your system. And so that's why there's a huge dose of black pepper extract in there. But yeah, I was very excited about that product too, because the only other thing that really on the market that works or that people use is phosphatidylserine, really, and maybe ashwagandha. But the data for the Amodin blew those away.
Well, when I use that by itself, I've used products that have phosphatidylserine and ashwagandha, KSM, or any of the others. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the benefits were better. I feel like with the those other products, it took a little longer to kick in. A little quicker to kick in. Like, you could notice a little sooner. But when Cortibolic when it got rolling, I was like, holy shit, this thing is, I don't know. It was just, again, one of the most impressive. It is the most impressive single ingredient supplement I've tried. It is also the most expensive, but it was yeah. And I think I had to lower the amount because it was just too much. But then I think some people, it's much like everything. Some people are fine, some people aren't. I found spacing it out to be a little better though, because you guys originally had
500.
Yeah.
And that I can handle the 500 at one time. It took me a couple days initially. That was the first thing, the first downfall I saw with the product, because I was so excited about it. I was like, the data's so good. Nobody's using this. It's really going to do well. And then you take the last part of the process is you take a beta sample and you're like, okay, we need to change the dose because people are going to have a lot of stomach issues, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a natural part of the ingredient. Like I tried to see if there's a way to change it, like absorptivity wise, or binding it differently, using a different capsule. It's just a property of the ingredient itself.
Yeah, I think I found spreading it out to be a little better, but then I think I even eventually lowered. I think it was two a day of the original and then 4 of the smaller, was it?
I think you did 2 of this 4 smaller and 1 of the original, because I remember, because I've never done 4 of the big ones. I take 500 just before I go to bed, because if I do take the whole, like 4 capsule serving, even if it's spaced out, it is still a lot. But I personally have stomach issues. Some people do take it, and if you can take it, the results are really, really good for fat loss. Very noticeable.
I think I worked up to whatever the maximum amount was. I think I worked up to it eventually, and then came back down, because I remember I was talking to you and you said, yeah, if you can, try it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I got up there, I was like, oh, it was just a bit, but yeah, it was a trade-off. I thought, this is working so good, but do I stop? It was.
I know. Trust me.
Yes. Yeah, so
I wish there was something done.
The Metabolic, the muscle builder.
Yes.
Again, you have a lot of things in there that, I mean, the Korea mistletoe I had seen, ashwagandha, as we had mentioned, the luxogenin, a few things in there that we had seen many times. What I mean, how did you stumble across, or here's a better question: of all the things in there, and you'll probably know them off by heart, what are the ones that kind of stand out? Like, what are the most important ones to you that you were kind of most excited to put in there? Because what is it, like 8, 9? Yep, 9. Jesus. And then
it's a lot of stuff.
What was what are the key features for you? What were the most important ones? I imagine that the mistletoe I thought was up there, because I've seen that in only a handful of products. I think Olympus might have been one of the first I remember seeing using it. And I think I
had never seen someone use it at 1,000 milligrams though, unless I'm mistaken. I'm
going to have to go back and look, because I know they were one of the first users, because they said they were, but I can't remember if it was 1,000. I'm going to say that it wasn't, but yeah. So what were the most, the key features for you, the ones that, I guess, the driving ingredients behind it for you?
So Nigella sativa is actually a really good ingredient for overall health, and great for increasing free testosterone and increasing total testosterone, as well as I think it has anti-diabetic properties. So I really like that ingredient. It was hard. A lot of times it's a liquid, so to get a powder part of it from the seed, it's a little difficult. But it works really well, especially at the higher doses. We use 750 milligrams of it per serving. So I really like that ingredient. Boron, obviously, is a no-brainer. I don't understand why that's not in more things. But the data for boron is just mind-blowing as for how simple it is of an element to just use and increase free testosterone. Dante Trudel preaches about boron all the time with clients. And so that was just something that I thought was simple. But the other ingredients that have the natural anabolic stuff, like Eucoma, which is the one that has the natural phytoandrogens, I believe that was in a product years ago, but I saw this study, I want to say in 2014, 15, somewhere around there. And it shows that it has these, they're called triterpenes, which eventually, when you have enough of them, they make squalene, and they make cholesterol, then they make vitamin D, and then DHEA, and all your sex hormones. So the triterpenes are the building block of your sex hormones. And they have these molecules that bind to the androgen receptor the same way as testosterone does, and expresses the genes that testosterone does once once it binds and goes into the nucleus of the cell. So I was excited about that ingredient because not a lot of people used it, but it's a natural way to increase testosterone that's not really hormonal. It's not a hormone. It's just a compound that works similarly. So I don't like to use the word natural SARM because SARM has like a very negative connotation, but that's kind of what it is. And then the japonica, which is another natural anabolic, that had really cool data for decreasing muscle breakdown. So when I was trying to make a product, it's like, how do you build muscle? What are the pathways besides just increasing testosterone? Are there things that are non-hormonal that can do the same thing? And that was one of the ingredients that popped up that had really good data for not only turning on genes that increase muscle protein synthesis through like mTOR and that pathway, but they reduce muscle breakdown. So you're kind of keeping your body in an anabolic state. You're not breaking muscle down, and you're telling your genes to build up muscle at the same time or increase muscle protein synthesis.
I really like the approach because as you talk through the ingredients, like you do actually think of the pathways and then or the mechanisms and find the ingredient. Whereas a lot of the time, if not most of the time, I hear from brands be like, oh, we found this cool ingredient, so we made a product around it. And they're not really hunting these things down and trying to find specifically. So you're doing the hard yards because you can bet your ass that if it works, someone's going to come and do it in their product.
I'm sure. I mean, I've already seen a lot of copy stuff, which I can't control that.
I feel like with Metabolic you won't. I don't think you will. The finer, or not, the more specific you get, like with this, even the sleep aid, Cortibolic, another great example. I think when you get into these specific areas where it's like, oh my God, someone says Cortibolic works amazing, and then a brand that's wanting to try and replicate it would look at it and just be like, well, fuck that noise. It's expensive as hell. And it's for a category that's kind of way off in the distance. And I think Cortibolic works, but it's also one of those ones that you have to, I guess, not really pay attention to, but you're not gonna, for the crowd that takes the fat burner, oh my God, I feel energy.
Yeah.
I'm burning fat today. Like it's not one that I think is for the mainstream necessarily, especially if they took, that high dose and then they'll be put off, or they'll probably go, I feel like some of the things can't be replicated. And I think the nootropic is probably I would say one of the most, I was going to touch on it eventually, which is obviously, the nootropic is obviously your latest creation. One we've been waiting for a while, because I remember hearing about this like a month, a year and a bit ago.
Almost a year, yeah.
And I was impressed that you kept some of the things that you actually revealed all that time ago, like at the same amounts. So you actually have been working on this for a year.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, you kind of, there was ingredient and it was whatever, and you're just like, fuck it, can't do this anymore. It's, again, I feel like it's a Chemix attack on the focus market. It is not something I've seen before. The formula, you see these things, some of them in pre-workouts more than the others, but you got your Kanna again. The Ivy Leaf, I was kind of like not familiar with this one.
You don't even know. You don't even know about that.
Because I always
you try that.
the thing I do is I always Google things I'm not familiar with. I'm like, is this just another name? Because a lot of brands sometimes do that thing where they'll put the source or an alternate name for the chemical, and I'm like, oh, and then, but I looked at this and all I saw were those little chemical bond pictures, and I was like, well, what the fuck is this? I haven't seen this in anything. And like the formula, it's got good dosages of things I'm familiar with, and even with the things I'm familiar with, it looks like a solid supplement. But then you throw those exotic parts in there, and I'm like, this is got to have something. This is going to be interesting. So I imagine that, like with Metabolic and your approach to finding these things, you must have been taking the same approach on this one.
Yeah. So the nootropic, like we just said, I've been working on for a very long time, and I did the same approach where, you know, what causes focus, concentration is serotonin, dopamine, all the your monoamines. How are they broken down? How can you naturally release them? What compounds do that? How to elevate your mood, and then how does the pharmaceutical work? Is there a natural pathway or natural ingredient that works the same way? Let's mess around, and I've kind of approached it from the, you need to hit your serotonin to increase your mood and make it very experiential. You get the dopamine release part of it, so that actually gives the focus. If you know how ADHD medications work, if you need them, your body is not getting enough stimuli from the environment or from you're naturally producing enough dopamine. So what that does is it allows your brain to release more dopamine so that it's stimulated, where when you notice somebody who has ADHD, like look around like this constantly, it's because they need outside stimuli to release dopamine. So when I looked at ingredients, how does that mechanism work with a plant? Like, can I find botanicals that do the same exact thing? And we did find some cool stuff. There's very different and unique things in there. That's why it took a while to source some stuff.
I would say half of it is yeah.
Yeah. The ivy leaf is a really, really cool ingredient. Most of people, I think, associate it with cough. I believe they sell it for
yeah.
cough.
That's when I looked it up. That was the one. Like when I typed in ivy leaf, nothing. When I typed in ivy leaf supplement, it was like just cold medicine.
Yeah, but there's what I standardized it to, that is one of the actives. There's a couple actives in there, and this one is a triple monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So it inhibits the breakdown of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So those things that make you feel good, like serotonin and dopamine, last longer in your body, which allows you to focus and have an elevated mood and get things done. And so I made the product for people to take when they, I need to read 6 hours or study, or I need to clean the house, or I have 10 work calls, or, just something that will keep you focused for a long time, based on the mechanisms of how, like I said, how pharmaceuticals work, and then what are the natural alternatives that I can use to make something similar.
Because we were mentioning about like Cortibolic, and that's obviously expensive. So that's the only thing you put in there. I have to imagine that there was some expensive things on this, because this is the first Chemix product with 21 servings. Or was there another reason behind that?
Well, I always am a huge believer in cycling stuff. So everything, I always tell people to cycle, no matter what it is. Your body will eventually break, when you start taking a lot of things exogenously, your body builds up receptors that break it down very quickly. And so that's how you get a tolerance. So it's basically, you can either do 3 weeks on, 1 week off type of thing, which is the 21 out of 28 days. Or the formula is very strong, where you could probably start off with 4 capsules instead of 8 and do really well.
That was my other thought process was, yeah.
I really put a lot into this product, and I say it's not all my stuff, but it's probably my favorite that I've done. Not just because it's the newest one, but it's the one.
When you first mentioned it, like with the pre-workout, there was some solid attention on focus, and when you announced this, it kind of, I don't know, it just seems like one of those categories where you can shine. Like a smart person or an educated person can shine. They can show like their skills. They can show that it's not just some dick putting together this, that, and whatever. He's not pulling it out from anywhere. Like it's one of those formulas, like a muscle builder. Again, the Metabolic looks good, but you're not able to compare yourself to an average muscle builder because there aren't very many out there. So you got your great stuff, and then you got like Tribulus and Fenugreek, and you got the typical mainstream ones. And so, and I think nootropic is one of the best places, because even in the pre-workout market, the Chemix pre-workout has some highlights, but it is in the mix with a lot of things, whereas the nootropic category just seems like a good fit for Chemix because it's you have the potential to put in all this and take that approach, and it's a market not many have touched, and it's, at least with the nootropics, it's growing, but I don't think it's as I don't know, you don't really see a lot of similar formulas.
It's not very saturated yet. I don't think.
Yet. And it's not like I'm not at the point where I'm seeing the same formula from nootropic to nootropic. It's like you get ashwagandha. I would think it's slowly becoming like a staple that they put in there now. But then you've also got some sort of choline and all that stuff. So it's those are common, but it's always those other things that you put around it, which was the other question I was going to ask is, what was the decision behind not putting caffeine in it? Because I thought it was quite an interesting one to not put. I'm a fan of mixing caffeine with nootropics, but I do like being able to do it myself, because some people put in like 300, some people put in bloody 100, and I was like, So I mean, what was the decision? Was that kind of the thought process behind that for you?
The initial thought process is I wanted to make something that you can take, so that you can not take caffeine for 7 to 10 days or whatever. Because I used to get this question all the time. People, obviously in America and probably all over the world, people are addicted to caffeine and coffee, and you see it all the time. But if your tolerance builds very, very quickly as 5 to 7 days of continuous use, your body will start to not get the same effect. So everyone, I used to get questions asking me, how do I decrease the tolerance of caffeine? And the answer is you take a little break, but no one wants to do that. So an alternative is to use nootropics, because they don't stimulate your central nervous system the same way. They work completely differently. They're very much more of a neurological effect versus a CNS effect. So that was the main reason. And to your point, different people have different caffeine tolerances. I can take, personally, if I take 100 to 150, that's plenty for me. Some people need 300, 400. Skywalk by Mileblocks is a really great focused product. It has a lot of caffeine in it though. And so for me personally, I don't like that much caffeine, but I like the other stuff in it, so I wanted to leave it out and leave it as your choice to add it for a little boost if you need it. From me trying it, and I really don't think you're going to need it, but some people just like caffeine and take it.
Were there ingredients that you didn't want to put in that were kind of in that stimulant area? Because I saw some of the things in there that were more pre-workout like, and I mean, I have seen focus supplements with yohimbine in there, but were there things in there that you were like, well, if I put this in, it might be too much energy, versus the whole idea of this is focus? Or was it just caffeine was the only one you wanted to leave out?
Well, the ones the stimulants that I use, like hygenamine and then dimethylphenylethylamine, those were put in there for a specific reason, for the dopamine effect, because they're very similar in structure to amphetamine and like DMAA, those type of compounds. So they work similarly in the body. And so there is a very good focus factor there without an over stimulation of your central nervous system like caffeine. They don't necessarily give you the jitters as they do give you more of a focus concentration thing. I don't like the word energy because that's such a ubiquitous term and kind of undefined, versus where caffeine, people equate caffeine with energy. And I don't think you needed it. And the stuff that I used in there, including Hortidine I used specifically as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. It's not really a stimulant. People look at it and it's in pre-workouts and people think because of its structure, it's got to be a stimulant, and it's actually very weakly binding to the receptors that the, say, hygenamine or DMA bind to. And so I didn't, but it works really well as a specific monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which is what I was, the whole kind of concept behind the focus is, let's keep the monoamine, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, let's keep them alive longer, or not alive, active longer. So
basically the focus benefits outweighed the energy in those cases for the stims. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's like I said, it just looks interesting. And that's the thing. I guess that's the thing with Chemix stuff is that you look at the formula on paper and you run through and you're like, this looks damn cool. Like it's just, and I mean, again, there are a few things in there like the lion's mane, the choline, the hordenine. Like you recognize these, but Chemix has got their reputation now where I guess it's not, you put multiple anomalies in a product. It's not like when DMAA first showed up, everyone was like, okay, I recognize all of these, but what the fuck is that? Like it's, you've got a few in there. And so, it's interesting. I think that would be the fan base of Chemix. We would understand that. I think a lot of the more premium, higher end users that are, like I said, willing to pay that $50 to $60 product, I think they understand that now. And it's like, as you were saying earlier, I think it's the Chemix way, it's the Chemix approach. Like you've built that reputation now where you're not some, I don't know, crazy dude just throwing together shit, and then people are going, well, I don't want to touch that because I don't recognize it. So I think it's become known. So you dropped the sleep, you've dropped the Metabolic. Focus is coming. It's like, is it out now? Is it
Black Friday.
Black Friday, yes, Black Friday.
Yeah.
All right, so I have to ask, obviously, and we probably won't see it for another year. Is there anything else you're working on?
I'm always working on stuff.
Well, what's the one thing that I assume you are always working on stuff, but what is the one thing that you have right now that I guess you're excited about, or I guess it could be the most interesting?
I don't know how much I can reveal at the moment. I have some stuff I'm working on that I'm trying to patent, actually get some IP for some ingredients, and I'm really stoked about that. I've had this idea for a while, and I brought it to some partners that I've worked with before, and everyone got behind it, and we are in the process of getting everything done for that. And so that is going to be something that will be in a future Chemix product first, obviously, because I'm patenting it with my team. People are always looking for the next new stim. So I do focus a lot of research on what is out there. And that's why I was really heavy on the nootropic, and finding rare botanicals and things that people never heard of, because they work and they can replace things that maybe people don't want to use. Like DMAA is something that, I personally don't really like the 1,3. If you've ever tried 1,4-DMA, it's actually really euphoric and cleaner. You have to use a slightly bit more of it to get the effect, just by the way the structure binds and everything, but it's cleaner, I think, versus 1,3-DMA. So there's always looking for something that is experiential, because most products, like if you talk about Cortibolic, for example, people don't associate it as a fat burner because it's not stimulants, and most people are assuming a fat burner is just
class that as a fat burner. Yeah,
it is a fat burner, but most people think of fat burners having stimulants in them, and so it's really about education, and that's what I've really focused on doing. And I just shot videos, like in-depth whiteboard videos for Metabolic, for sleep, for the nootropic, and for the GDA, which actually was out a while ago, that we never did a whiteboard video. Just schedules conflicting and stuff. I couldn't get it filmed in time. And so I just shot all these videos that are going to be out soon, so that you can understand a little bit of the method to the madness, and maybe some of the ingredients that you haven't heard of. I go into a little more detail and talk about them, because it's just, if you don't educate somebody on something, they're going to miss it, because you kind of go to what you know, and then you don't see caffeine in a nootropic, so you could dismiss it, and you see all these weird botanicals that you've never heard of. But if you actually educate the people about why this is in there and what it does, and this is why you should take it, I think that's the growing movement of our industry, hopefully, is more and more education versus the let's put some cool stuff together and just sell it and have a cool name or whatever, versus actually educating people about why this is there and why you should take it, and why this isn't there. You know, there's a lot of ingredients I don't use because I don't think the data is good, or I don't think it fits the product, or they can cause side effects by combining stuff. Most people don't even think about stuff like that. But there's a lot of things you shouldn't combine. So I always take that into consideration as well.
I think Chemix has got, I feel like it's a unique audience. Like, even if you've been taking supplements for 2 or 3 years, I still think that Chemix would be an eye-opener. Like, it's one of those ones that you graduate to. Like, if Chemix is the first brand you try and you haven't touched a supplement before, I'd be impressed that you found it. But I think you've got that unique position of being just that step up. It just has that approach and the effectiveness of the supplements. There are obviously a few categories that Chemix has yet to branch into. The most notable I'd have to ask is, because you don't have a protein powder, but for the life of me, I can almost not imagine that being like, it just doesn't seem very fitting. But I mean, is obvious. I already know the answer to this, so I think I know the answer is there a reason you haven't done a protein powder?
How do you make it cool? Like, we've talked about making protein, and if you wanted to stay in line with the Chemix model as a brand, what can you make in protein powder that would make it either work better or have something different in there? And there's not a lot of things you can do. It's just a food supplement. So that's why I did the EAA instead, because most people's EAAs are very underdosed, and the ratios, I don't know where people come up with them, and they focus just on leucine, and they don't realize that you need all these other essential amino acids, because, you know, you turn on mTOR, that's great, but it's on. But if you don't have the substrates to build muscle tissue, it's not going to build anything. So I think when we talked about the protein, I went in the EAA direction first, and then we still may do a protein, but it would just be almost, I don't know. There's just, how do you make it cool and different? That's what I've been trying to figure out. I've had some ideas, but nothing's panned out.
There was probably like 2018, maybe. That was when I saw 2017, 18. You had brands kind of around the peak when everyone just started piling in. You had brands with the same argument. They were like, do I just do whatever it is that people want? Like just an isolate, nothing more, just pure isolate, try and make it taste good. And then you had the people coming along doing things like, no, I'm going to make it really stand out. And they had a few where I saw some that were enhanced with philositol was one. I think someone put Lexogenin in one of theirs. You get the obvious, they added creatine, but none of them have really stayed. Like I've seen, like you've seen protein powders that have come, like Ghost Way, one of their first products, but it is now like one of their flagships. Like it's just one of their big popular products. And it's as simple as you can get. It tastes
really good, right? They're really known. Sorry to interrupt. They're really known.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's good proof that you could do basic, you can do complex, but the key I think is flavor, which I find is flavor focused isn't necessarily the Chemix vibe. I don't know. I don't really.
Well, some of these ingredients are very hard to mask.
Oh no, I already know the answer to this.
Trust me, we're actually working on reflavoring some things and changing a formula slightly to make them better tasting, because I understand if there are the people that won't drink it if it doesn't taste good. There are the people that don't care what it tastes like as long as it's effective. So we are actively trying to change some of the flavors and make it more palatable. But at the end of the day, some things just can't be masked. Like you can't mask a gram of Kanna in a powder form, which is another reason why the nootropic originally was supposed to be a powder, became a capsule, because all of those things, especially the ivy leaf, tastes terribly. The Kanna tastes terribly. It was just a factor of not only solubility but taste and covering masking agents, and then you get into things that you don't really want people taking. Like you don't want to put a lot of sucralose, you don't want to put a lot of artificial sweeteners or dyes or any of that stuff. I wanted to keep it as close as just the botanical as possible, which is why we did the capsule form.
I think it's a Chemix way, right? Like even though a bad taste isn't great, but I feel like if it's like it's almost proof that, like, let's just say the product was citrulline, beta-alanine, caffeine, what taurine, and it tasted like shit. I'd be like, my God, this is what the hell's wrong with these people? But then if I tried a Chemix product and I saw the label and I tasted it and I'm like, it's not the best, I'd be like, that makes sense because he's put all this in here, and that he's hunted down into the deepest forests of South Africa to get this stuff. So it's, that it's like, it's kind of, it's not expected, but I think if someone stumbles onto Chemix and has graduated from another brand because they want something more, they want something, I think that consumer is already at the point where they know it's not going to taste like strawberries. I feel like they understand that if you look at Chemix and you've graduated and built your supplement experience to then, I feel like you should. And if you're not, then you should probably take more supplements. But I feel like it's one of those things that, it's just it's because I have had some supplements that taste awful. Similar approach though. They put the ingredients first, and they kind of say the same thing. But again, I think Chemix has a different appeal. It's the audience is more up there. Like if you're selling a $30 pre-workout and it tastes bad, you're going to have some problems because it's
right.
It's that kind of consumer is looking for something else. And protein powder, yeah, I mean, it is a category that I've had so many people ask me, so many brands ask me, how do I make it different? And I don't think the question isn't whether or not you can make it different, because I can guarantee you could make something different. The complete argument is someone going to pay any extra money for a protein powder when, as you said, they really only want it for post-workout shakes or meals or whatever? I don't imagine. Yeah. And those ones with Velocitol and Luxogenin and some others I've seen out there, they sit at like $40-$45 for a 2 pound, and they don't last. But Ghost Whey, that's $40-$45 on their site, and that thing has done really well to the point where they haven't made a 5 pound or haven't needed to. So and I think it's key is obviously flavor and taste. People are willing to pay more for flavor and taste, and I guess extra ingredients, stuff like that. I suppose. I mean, I think I might be out of questions, but I think I could really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, it's I was just mostly impressed by the approach, how you would, like, each supplement you discussed, you highlighted it perfectly when you said you looked for ingredients that did these specific actions and mechanisms and stuff like that. I was I don't know, I knew you thought things differently. I didn't know that was the approach. I didn't know it was just impressive to hear, and you kind of naturally just touched on it every single time we talked about Metabolic, Cortibolic, nootropic. I think that was just awesome to hear because again, I'm used to the $30-$40 brands that say things like game-changing pre-workout. I've bumped the caffeine to 450. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's yeah, man, I thought it was really cool to hear that. I don't know if too many people know that or believe that, but it's yeah, that was just really interesting, and I appreciate you sitting down and chatting.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.